Hi, I'm Rob Price, and I'm talking to some inspirational leaders of some of the leading AI and Gen AI businesses in the world. Welcome to Futurise.
Hi, I'm Luis Lancos, and I'm one of the founders and chief executive of Datawhisper. Pleasure to meet you. A bit about myself. I'm an IT leader and a senior technology executive leader for many years, and the last 12 or 13 years I did in financial services, and within payments. It's an area that I know very well. And I've been leading IT, but also leading innovation. I've been absolutely fascinated by innovation and especially the potential of emerging technologies, the potential of AI to transform business and to impact business. From developing products to transforming process, it's been a fascinating journey. I've been working in some of the biggest companies in this area, from Atos, Worldline, where I was technical director for payments, and then at later stage SVP at US Bank, which is Elavon in Europe, where I had the opportunity to lead the technology across Europe, and where I actually brought the innovation team into Europe, which at the time was mainly in US. And we did some incredible stuff there at the innovation team, using AI, for instance, to monitor transactions in real time, using AI from fraud, from creating insights to the operations center. And this was even before the 2017, the transformation, the transformers. And you could see already the power of what we were building. And if you use it properly, like plasticine, you can actually have incredible results. The consequences are obvious. I decided to start my own project called Datawhisper. And Datawhisper is a really interesting project. And you and me, we had loads of conversations at the beginning of the project. And interesting enough, initially I was focused in using AI to solve the data fragmentation problems in the company. And then I started to realize that all this is beautiful conversation, but the first big problem we need to resolve into financial services and high regulated industries is actually to enable a safe, responsible, and compliant deployment and approach of these models into the organizations. And it's so interesting that the end of last year, O'Reilly did a survey to a few hundred companies, and they found out that the second biggest reason holding adoption of generative AI within organizations is actually the risks associated with compliance and legal from these models. And by curiosity, the first reason, interesting enough, was the lack of understanding of the use cases, which they are connected, but it's really, really interesting. And a few weeks ago, we actually saw, interesting enough, I was just actually reading that article more that the Air Canada having to pay it and to a commitment that was made by the bot. And this is incredibly interesting because as the regulatory starts to appear from United States, from Europe, and then everybody heard about the AI Act, right? And the new regulatory emerging from UK, from Asia, from US, what you'll see, it's a really pressure to organizations on how to build, how to manage, how to run these models. And also it will create pressure on the business regulators to see how these models are being used within the business practices and how aligned they are with the regulatory. And that's precisely the type of things we are trying to resolve. So we are creating a platform, a governance platform based on agents that actually looks at the business risks, provides a framework from technology and business risks to run this model safely.
Lewis, how do you go from a career in big organizations globally with lots of responsibilities and lots of people to setting out on your own in that process of looking for people to support, looking for investment and things like that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting and good question, right? But it has an easy answer, actually. If you know me, and I love innovation, right? I'm not a corporate animal, right? I don't particularly having heavy rules, a lot of red tape. It's not my thing. I love innovation. I love to build stuff. I love to deliver stuff. I love to see things growing and transforming. And I was always fascinated by the impact of the emerging technologies. So I think my mind, while I was leading and driving IT, my mind was always in innovation and how I can transform things. So in that sense, that is my natural path. That is my natural mindset. And if you have that, you have some natural propension to accept some risk, right? And maybe that's why I'm a motorcyclist and I'm learning to fly gliders. I have this kind of adrenaline in me. And when I saw what really was happening with the Transformers since 2017, there is a moment that you sit and you think by yourself, what I want to do. Do I want to sit at the station looking and see the train pass by, or I want to be in the train? And for me, the decision was straightforward. I want to be in the train. So I prepared the things and I started my own venture. And I work hard as hell, but I love it. And I would do it again.
And I know that you've had great traction in the conversations that you've been having with different people, with organizations, with incubators. But how have you found what would be the single lesson out of that journey that you would give to other founders looking to equally do something interesting in this new Gen AI world? What's been the biggest thing for you that you've learned?
The sense of purpose, right? If I think it's incredibly important because the journey is a hard journey, right? You will have to listen, to learn to listen. You will have to change, adapt. You will have to fight, right? And it's incredibly important that you start the journey with a sense of purpose because you know why you are fighting for, right? The second aspect is set direction. Don't plan into much detail, right? This is actually a really interesting aspect, right? Many people, either from universities or coming from organizations, they have this almost waterfall plan mode that I plan everything in the outcomes. And that actually becomes a problem if you're starting your own business, right? Because you started to be frustrated because the plan never it never realizes as it's in the paper. And then that frustration stops you to listen for opportunities and listen what's going around you. So you need to really take an approach centered on the purpose, set directions, where you want to go, what are the big milestones, and then learn to navigate to the next stop, but listening what's happening, understanding the opportunities, and then transforming the opportunities, something that is valuable for the startup and also for the community and for the customers that you engage, right? So all the partners.
Cool. So as far as I know, you've got your first funding, you've got your first customers, you've got your first people, you're beginning to grow. Is the focus still FS? Is it, I mean, in terms of people listening to the podcast today, are we appealing to fintech, financial services, heavily regulated environments that have that focus on ethics and compliance?
The starting point is financial services. Why? Because me and my co-founders, we all have huge knowledge in the area, right? However, the problem is a bit larger because it applies to any high regulated organizations that they need to ensure that they have the governance framework in place to adopt and to run large models across the organization, right? So that's the starting point. But I guess we will, as the framework will evolve, it will apply to other sectors, right? We will need to do some training of the models and adaptation in terms of the context and the regulatory, but the core concept is the same.
And of course, normally we'd be talking around ethics and responsibility and the need in delivering products in this particular space using AI, generative AI. We had a conversation the other day around bias, for example. Bring that to life for listeners in terms of what that means for you, because I mean, obviously, in essence, what you're doing is building a product around that area. It's to ensure that others are helped in the products and services that they're deploying by enabling that.
Absolutely. Let me create some context here, right? Imagine that you have a product based on large models, a chatbot that actually is helping somebody in the trading floor to do the trades, right? Whatever the conversation happens between the person, the person working at the bank and the bot, it's absolutely crucial. And it's crucial not only about the question, what you are asking, but also the responses of the model. And we need to ensure things like, is there somebody, is that person trying to trick the models, for instance, with things like prompt injection? And that can take us to considering a big field of prompt security, right? But we need to check that. Is there any conversation that would violate the Bank Act of 2009, for instance? Is the conversation respecting all the internal policies, right, in terms of data privacy, in terms of subjects that should be touched, and how we approach the customers and so on? And we could apply this type of logic looking at the various aspects. We're talking about a trade floor. We could talk about customer service, right? Like, and how we ensure that the conversation with the customer not only is compliant, is regulatory compliant, but also it matches the business rules. That if we would have that on the Canadian Airlines, we could have caught and said this is not within the business rules. So it's incredibly important when we look at the various aspects that is involved. That starts in ethics, it starts in bias, it goes to prompt security. It then goes to a bit of moderation against business rules and internal policies. And then it goes to, obviously, data privacy and to the relevant regulatory, which, by the way, is not just AI tech regulatory. And that's one of the biggest things we are bringing to the conversation is, yes, the AI Act, it's really relevant, but there are implications at the business side, like the Code of Conduct from FCA, like the Bank Act, right? So we need actually to have a wider look and see where it sits. So it's a whole process to understand from questions to responses if they fit and if they are safe and for purpose. And of course, this has another implication to be just to finish. There has another implication in terms of risk. We need to empower the compliance teams, the risk teams, to understand, looking at the overall organization, what is the risk of the models, how they are behaving, and how we can adjust the risk level, and where we need to introduce the human in the loop. So aspects like that, right?
I have to do a quick plug for my conversation on my other podcast, Digital Responsibility, later this week, where I'm talking to a team in France who's been researching all of the regulations and all of the policies that organizations need to find a path through. So we should try and link the two conversations in some way. Now, we said earlier, Lewis, that you were building your team out, and I'm interested to know how you're approaching that. So how do you find some of the talent that's out there for doing things that I know from previous conversations are pretty groundbreaking, not only in terms of the technologies that people are using, but the approaches that you're putting in place?
It's a complex subject and crucial. It's the most important subject for a startup, right? I think the founder is primarily the biggest recruiter, right? The success of the organization depends on the success of people that are around. As a startup, I was looking at two aspects. One, how I detect talent, not only talent that from a technical perspective, but also that has the mindset to be part of startup that is always on and moving fast. Not everyone has this type of mentality, which to make things complicated. And the second is how I manage risk, because one of the biggest problems we have at startups is you don't have the resources all the time to go through the normal hire cycle where you hire somebody, then a couple of months or 1 month later you discover that person is not good, and then you hire again. And by doing that, the whole product for a very small team starts to be delayed. So what I did was a mix of partnering, selecting a technical partner that already has some resources that we could plug in. I know them, we could test them, and then use that to build the starting of the team. And then a set of discussions that I have with people that got really interested in the project, that has deep technical expertise, and then we start to explore jointly, and that person at the end ends up joining the project, right? Of course, this is the beginning. This is not maintainable as we move on and we grow. So I think there is a mix between this approach and then the traditional approach to recruiting, right?
So I know that year two, I think, in terms of the project. I'm sure that you were thinking about it long before, but as you said earlier, but in terms of you're in the second year, and within that, I know lots of conversations, lots of positive steps forward. What ambitions are you setting, and maybe kind of split that in terms of within the next year or two, and then maybe beyond?
Absolutely. So we started formally in 25th of June last year, 2023. We've been growing quite fast. And you are right, I was thinking in the project much before, and we were having a lot of discussions around it. This year, I really want to have the product in the markets in the SaaS form so this year in my mind is prepare to scale, right? I want to have the first pilots. We already have our first customer, and I want to have a few more pilots running and preparing for next year to start to scale. And I want to scale within UK, but also US markets is probably my starting point. And of course, looking at Europe. I think there is the space, and we can be a significant player with this AI governance market with our agent-driven platform. And that's what we are targeting in the next few years.
Fantastic. Now, we had a conversation not too long ago about fintech, fin or tech, and it feels like a lot of your background is financial services, payments. I know that's a long-standing passion for you, but it feels as though you're moving very much firmly towards the tech space at the moment, relevant to the financial services space, as you said. So, as a final last thought for any students who are on their journey into the career space at the moment and making decisions around FS or tech or AI, what final thoughts would you give them as they make their first choices about following their passions, whether they be entrepreneurial or into the corporate workplace?
The first advice would be, don't think that whatever you are training yourself and starting, it's your career. I think we live in the world that you will have more than one career, right? The most important is understanding opportunities and listening yourself, right? Whatever you do, I always say, you have to be good in what you do. You need to be focused. And the only way to do that is to be passionate about what you do, right? And that for me is the core, because if you follow this type of approach, the rest will build naturally, right? It always builds. You always engage and always will have opportunities coming where you can build upon, right? That's what I would probably say, right? And one just last thing that I think it's really important is that don't be scared about AI. AI is an incredible tool. And there are two types of people approaching AI. The ones that fear AI, and those one most likely will be the ones defeated by AI itself because they don't understand how to use, and the ones that embrace AI and use it to augment themselves. Those are the ones that will use AI to achieve success. So don't be afraid of AI, embrace it.
Lewis, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for talking to us.
Absolutely a pleasure to talk with you, Rob, as always.